What's up, Holly?
Not too much. How's it going, Tannah?
Good, good. For those who are listening, I kicked Holly off today with just a question of how much does common sense cost? So for anyone listening or watching, that's the kind of vibe you're gonna get from me today.
Tannah might be leaning into her stress number this exact moment. She might be. There might be some 8 energy
No, I
coming.
am.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into our Enneagram topic today, just a reminder, this is Tannah and I's podcast called the Enneagram Adventure. You can also find us on all the socials if you're into that. So you might be watching this on YouTube, but we are also in all the other places as well. Tannah and I are IEQ9 certified coaches with that tool for coaching individuals, teams, for personal and professional development. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Enneagram, specifically mistypes. Mistyping. Not sure the exact accurate way to say that, but that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Before we jump into mistypes, though, Tannah, do you want to give the reminders about what makes the Enneagram different?
Sure do. Yeah, so what makes the Enneagram different from your other traditional personality assessments is that it is based off of your core motivation rather than your behaviors that you exhibit each and every day. So it's a more in-depth look at why you do the things that you do rather than just the things that you do. Where it's coming from in terms of the motivation and a little bit of a deeper dive into yourself. So that's our summary of it, but there's so much more to it than that. So
Yeah,
hopefully we've hooked you and you're listening to learn more.
yeah, yeah, that's super high level. I was reminded end of last week, actually, I was in a conversation with someone and they referenced the Berkman, and those of you that are familiar with personality assessments might be familiar with the Berkman. The Berkman's like all color based, but it's behaviors that are associated with each of the 4 colors, right? So it's like red, yellow, green, blue. And as the conversation was going on and the person was talking about, oh, I'm a blue and I'm this and I'm that, I was like, and then she was like, and when I get stressed, I go here and I become a yellow. And I was like, well, because that's all about your behaviors, but we need to talk about like the motivation that drives those behaviors. I happen to know that person's Enneagram type, and I was like, okay, got it. Yeah. So,
That's great.
yes,
That is great.
just to stay on that, it really is about the motivation, not the behavior. You could have 2 people with similar behaviors, very different motivations.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So,
Mistyping. It feels like a verb.
it does. Mistyping,
It's
mistyped.
giving verb energy. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
giving verbs.
Yeah. So mistyping, we decided to do a podcast on this because we had a recent YouTube comment that was sort of calling out how in our 8 episode when we were giving examples of eightness, mostly from about Tannah's husband, that they were like, oh, it sounds like a 1. And so I thought, well, maybe we should talk more about this because there are behaviors that 8s and 1s can share that could make them look like each other, but the motivation is totally, totally different.
I think, and whoever commented on the YouTube channel, that is actually what I thought Lannon was originally. I thought he was a 1-to-1-1, very specific. And that specific subtype with a 1 is giving 8. It usually gets mistyped as 8, vice versa. So what can I say about because the 1-to-1-1 is the onest one
No,
in more ways than.
the self-preservation one is the onest one.
Oh, okay.
The
Yep.
one to
Yep. Yep.
one, the 1-to-1 one is the most intense one.
That's right. It
Yeah.
capitalizes on that feeling. So it's so the 8 is also referred to as the challenger. A 1-to-1-1 is somebody who is trying to almost reform the people around them and like kind of right these wrongs. And right is right and wrong is wrong. And there's no in between.
Yes.
So you can now, as I describe it, a bit understand why they get mistyped, probably, but um very accurate to say that and think that because he certainly behaves like a one at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say the other reason that mistype happens, and while I think it's very common for one-to-one ones to mistype as eights and vice versa, I think ones and eights could also mistype because if you're not clear on why you want something to be perfect,
Mm.
it could be about control, right? So I shared this story once before, but I was once talking with an eight who talked about during COVID, she kept her house immaculate. She has like three small children, and she managed to keep her house immaculate during COVID because it was something she could control. And so if someone
Mhm.
just watched her and her behaviors, they would think, oh, one, she wants everything in its perfect place, everything that here, whatever. No, it was she could control her house. So understanding that difference between perfectionism because I want it to be perfect and I want to control it, those are different.
Very different. And we're fresh off a reminder that this is about motivation. And if the motivation is to control something versus the motivation to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Two very different things, very
Yeah.
different, which is an important distinction when you think about any number that you could mistype. So, one other like little disclaimer I will give before we head into mistypes is like, um, the Enneagram is so different because it's based off of motivation. So sometimes it's hard to like remove yourself from the behaviors because the behaviors, it takes a little bit to know a person. Like that's the thing, right? Is now that people see the podcast, I have friends who are like, "Oh, what do you think I am?"
Oh,
And
right.
if they're like acquaintances, I'm like, I don't know. You want to share some deep, dark secrets here? You want to, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to recognize that it happens a lot and it's just the Enneagram is just different. It's based off of something that's deeper than your surface level behavior.
Right.
So, disclaimer on that, but also disclaimer of when you're thinking about people in your life that don't know their Enneagram, if you want to use it as a tool, I would strongly suggest paying to get a certification, like paying to get somebody who has a certification to do your assessment to give you the information. So then you're not trying to work towards something based off of a type that you think someone is, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I think Holly's a three. So I'm going to,
Yeah.
you know, treat her X, Y, or Z way because I think that that's what she needs.
Yeah.
You
And it
don't,
could be way
y-
off.
right. You don't know until you know.
Yeah. And there's been plenty of
Um,
people, even you and I have talked about, right, where we're like, ooh, showing up like, and then
mm-hmm.
come back, you're like, oh, that was not on my bingo card. I didn't
Yeah.
have that one picked out. Yeah. So it's also another good lesson to be like, we probably shouldn't be typing each other based on behaviors. The healthier would be to let that play out and have the person tell you what they are. Or if you're, coaching someone, then you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my disclaimer.
Yeah. So I think another common mistype that we could talk about that you can talk about personally is the social two that often mistypes like a three.
Yeah, this one is actually pretty close to home for me because my actual numbers are very close. So my second highest number is three. Um, and I think the biggest distinction is, again, it goes back to the motivation where I might show up like I'm really motivational, like I really want to win, like I want to be part of this team, right? Like I want to achieve, which I think is true based off of my second highest number being 3. But at the end of the day, my motivation still lies with relationships. It doesn't lie with the accomplishment.
Right.
So I think that's for me the biggest distinction of those two things. Some type of a social 2 also reads really 3. Like the social aspect of that in the like I mentioned, like team is part of this for me. It's just the way that I associate, like whether it be at work or in a sport or but those are typically the people like a social 2 reads like a 3 in the group where they're speaking up, they're taking charge, they're kind of that like more vocal individual in the group. What's odd and worth mentioning is this is probably why I'm like triggered by some 3s because I read a little bit like a 3. So that's the work for me. I love 3s. It's just my own ego gets triggered by 3s sometimes. What else would you say is the reason social 2s show up
Yeah,
like
I
3?
think in the social too, it can, let me think about how to say this. The sort of social two-ness and their desire to be in close proximity to people of authority or whatever, that can read competitive.
Yeah.
And sort of the desire to have influence can read competitive. But again, that's in the relational aspect of it. It's not the pure drive to win or that you believe you're going to get love through your achievements, because that's where that real motivation comes from for 3s. Whereas 2s, it's still really about how am I helping you so that we have a good relationship so that you won't leave me.
I will say that for me, and I talked a little bit about this back all the way back on our 2 podcasts, and I mentioned a little story about when I was a freshman and my teacher said that I could suit up for varsity if I scored 3 goals in my last 2 games, like in totality. And he was a teacher that I was actually relatively close with. I would help like organize classroom stuff and during my free period. And I scored 5 in my last 2 games. It wasn't about scoring 5 goals and wanting to suit up for varsity. It was because I had a relationship with him and I wanted to make him proud of me,
Yeah.
which is like really gross because I really ended up really not liking that coach or that individual at all. But it's interesting because that's still very present for me today. And it was one of the very first icks that I got about myself when we started this work. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I came to you and I was like, oh my God,
Mhm.
I want to be best friends with all the authority in my life. Ew. Oh, and I still do. Like, guys, this is real. Like, this is real. I want to be like the shining star for them. So I'll work my ass off. I will literally work myself into a place of being really unhealthy. If I get like a little love from that person in my life, I'm on cloud 9. I'm like, I'm in a great mood. I'm doing great. The work for me in that is the fact that someone holds that much power over my mood and my well-being is very deep work for me.
Yeah, that is a lot to unpack and overcome.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah.
We're working on
Yeah.
it.
I'm gonna try to stay on topic with the mistyping, but like I have other questions that are coming to mind around that in terms of if it's if the positive side of that has such a positive impact on you, would imagine that the negative side, so if they find some disappointment or whatever, right?
Oh my
It,
God, it's so
yeah,
bad.
yeah,
It's so bad. But it reads to 3. It's not the
yes.
achieve. It's not like the thing. It's the, oh my God, you're proud of me, you like me.
That's because no matter what anyone says, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna like tangent for just a hot second. Sure. And it's in the middle of this podcast, not at the end. So please don't turn this off yet. But this goes back to that idea of like, we are all children in adult bodies. So everyone is walking around with maturity levels having to do with these things that we got tied up in for survival as kids, with the emotional maturity of whatever age that was. What were you, 14?
Oh yeah, 14.
Yeah. So, yeah, Brandon brought this up recently where he was like, yeah, some people never mature past high school emotionally. And so they're all still hanging on to all of that same baggage from that time. And I don't know about you, but that time for me was not the best. I did not love it.
No, it wasn't. I guess like this is why the deep work is important,
Yeah.
but all very true and valid.
Okay. So sorry about that.
Mistype
We'll get back to mistypes. We're going to try to stay a little more on topic.
on topic.
Well, the one that I can talk to that sometimes happens for me, although I don't think I exhibit it in the same way that some who mistype this way do, but the 1 to 1 5 can sometimes read like 4. And we talked about that a little bit before. I have some of that tendency, but I don't think it comes off as strongly as other people. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong there.
No, I think even I guess like I don't know, maybe this is me jealous of you having a little flavor of 4 because I need that. Lord knows I need that. But I think you do it in a way that reads like healthy. And it reads 5 energy, right? What I can think of is like invite me to the thing, but like I don't really want to go to the thing. But invite me.
Yeah,
Like I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
I don't know how much of that's 4 and how much of that's 5, but it's definitely true. I always want to be invited. Sometimes I actually want to go, but a lot of times I don't want to go. But I always want to be invited because I still want to be included. So maybe that is a little 4. It also depends on the thing. Like if it's a smaller, intimate thing, it's more likely
Yeah.
that I'm going to show up than if it's like
Yeah.
a party
Yeah.
or bowling. Oh man, not
Bowling
interested. No,
is a
thank you.
trigger. Oh no.
No, thank you. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
But again, it's in the motivation. The core motivation for me isn't necessarily to be unique and different and seen as special. For me, it's still, my motivation still comes from this desire to have independence through the collection of knowledge or whatever. Okay, so we've covered, yeah, 1 to 1 5s can look like 4s, social 2s can look like 3s, 1 to 1 1s can look like 8s. What's another
What
one?
about 3? Or what is it? Is it a self-pres 3? I thought that Enneagram 3s get mistyped as 8s. They can get mistyped, as I recall, 3s get mistyped as 8s because, like, think about when a 3 is like adamant, like, nope, this is right, I'm right. And it can read like an 8 where it's very black and white, right and wrong. This is the right way to do it. I'm going to do it my way. And it can read like a control motivation.
Yes, social threes sometimes look like 1-to-1 eights.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But that like I was thinking through, that control motivation of an 8 when a 3 is like going hard, like they are motivated to I am right, this is the right way to do it. I know that I'm right. And it can read like a control thing. We're
Yeah.
like, nope, this is mine. I'm going to do it. This is the right way to do it. And that's it. But even that, like the leadership part of threes can sometimes read 8 as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
like that really charismatic ability to lead people and kind of have this greater motivation to win is a bit of 8 energy as well.
Yeah. And I think threes have the ability to be direct, which often also reads like 8.
Yeah.
And I can think of this example just in a couple of people that you and I know. The 1-to-1 8 also has kind of like at least the ones I know. And so I'm not trying to like make a generality, but the 1-to-1 eights that I know also have like a little bit of like a flair to them that could read like the vanity side of a 3.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
right. Because I think oftentimes the word that's associated with 1-to-1 eights is charisma. There, I have a close 1-to-1 eight in my life that I've talked about on this podcast, but it is like flair. It's like vanity. And I think for her specifically, it does show up like vanity, which is funny. You know who you are. But yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. So some other common mistypes. This one is fascinating to me. So we'll have to talk through it a little bit, but it's the social 4 that looks like the 1-to-1 7.
Oh, interesting.
I have to think about that in terms of do I know some social 4s.
Is it that inhibition? You think? Where a social 4, I could see kind of like I'm gonna kind of be bold and dare to be unique and like stand out, where a 7 can be flamboyant isn't the right word, but
Well,
like kind
yeah,
of that person that
yeah,
sticks out in a crowd.
right, because they are you're right. It is they're uninhibited. And so
Yeah,
that
yeah,
unique side of the 4, that I'm unique and special and different, starts to look like that uninhibited 7. And that the 1-to-1 side of that, when it comes through, is going to have a little more intensity. So it might be a little even more over the top.
right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, I kind of want to be a 1-to-1 4. Maybe I changed my mind.
You mean a social 4?
Yeah, social 4. I want to be a social 4.
Maybe
Yeah.
that was the little you. Like, think about that from your
Oh, soul
child,
child.
because you were social subtype. So that would make sense because the subtypes are instinctual. So,
That tracks.
yeah.
That might have been it. That
Okay.
might have been it, folks.
So go back 2 episodes and we talk about Soul Child and 2 and 4. Okay, so this one's also interesting as a mistype. And this one maybe we spend a little time on this one too. It's the social 8 and the social 2. So social 8 is the counter type of 8. I'm thinking about you and I also both know a social 8. And I think of him a little bit like a teddy bear. He's more of a teddy bear, like protective, than he is a marshmallow wrapped in barbed wire.
Say the mistype again for me one time.
Social 8, social 2.
Well, a couple of things come to mind. My husband is a social 8 that feels like a 2.
Interesting.
So that immediately came to mind. But it could be because of that, like that protector nature.
Yeah.
So if you think about a social 8, sometimes an 8 is called the protector in some cases. So it can read like I'm being really loyal and vigilant for my people, therefore motivated by relationship. It could read like that, but it's kind of the way that I see my husband, and his feels like a 2 is he does feel really deeply for the people that he's really close to. He has really tight relationships. So I could see that. I really could see that. Maybe also a reason I collect 8s.
Could be. Could be the reason you collect 8s.
You guys, I'm finding so much out about myself tonight.
Clearly for me, like this is triggering level 5. Now I'm gonna have to go back and like relearn all of these that are not as
I was
common. Like I can't now do this without like the whole textbook. That
For you guys who are not watching on YouTube, I literally saw this coming when she reached down to grab the other textbook that she has on this stuff. Busy fiving.
yes.
Sorry, one moment. One moment. I need to do a deep dive.
I now need to like read all of this while we're podcasting so that I can relay the information correctly. The thing that I just flipped to though was like where it's talking about a mistype between 2 and 5, and it says, while 2s and 5s are not a common mistype, this could occur with a more intellectual introverted 2 who's unaware of how deeply they are driven to serve others. Okay. All right. All right. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Are you saying I'm more like you than you think?
I'm just surprised that that's even like listed. I mean, maybe we should, I don't know how you would do this research of the percentages of this, but okay. All right. This one I do buy that 2s, self-preservation 2s and 6s often mistype. It's more
Oh,
common
that makes sense.
6 to mistype as 2, especially a female.
For a 6 to mistype as 2.
Yeah. But I think
Um,
that goes back to the gender thing because it says especially if they're female. That's where like the, oh, I have to be helpful thing comes through. And then some women in particular, we talked about that when we talked about 2s. Some women can be like, oh, I believe I'm a 2 because I'm a mom or whatever.
yeah.
When in
Yeah.
fact, their motivation is different.
I was just going to say it's like everybody thinks that their mom's a 2.
Right. Yeah. Except for when their mom's a 5. Suzanne Stabile's mother. Those of you who don't know who Suzanne Stabile is, she's commonly referred to as the godmother of the Enneagram. She's been doing Enneagram work for 40 years, probably. But her mom is a 5, and she talks a lot about, and she's a 2. She talks a lot about their connection and like with her mom and how her mom showed up and everything. So,
That's interesting.
yeah.
That's interesting. Well, the 6 mistype is 2 makes a bit more sense back to that loyalty piece that you sometimes see with 8.
Yeah.
Um, where if it's about the relationship, I could see it getting mistyped that way.
I think the 6, it seems to be a common, at least in the 2s that I know, a common thing in tri-type also to be thinks like a 6. And I can imagine if you're a 2 who thinks like a 6, that could also drive a mistype there.
To your point, it goes back to tri-types because if my husband who's an 8 feels like a 2,
Yeah.
again, like, okay, I'm going to be a 5 for a second. It would be interesting to see like what are the most common subtypes for every Enneagram
Yeah.
and by gender.
Partially because I have the book open in front of me, but it's a good example because Aaron and I had a discussion when I was getting certified in the Enneagram. He took the assessment, he came back as a 9. But we were having a discussion about the differences between 2 and 9. And he was like, "Well, maybe I could be a 2." And we were talking through like how it shows up, how the motivation truly shows up. And we were going through it and he was like, "Well, I like to be helpful and this and that." And we're talking through it and almost where he was talking himself into the fact that he was mistyped. And I was like, "Well, wait, let's break this down for just a second." And I'm going to tell a story about him as a child that he should really tell himself. By the way, I tried to get him to come and do the next soul child conversation, and he was like, "Not ready to be on the podcast yet." So I'm going to tell this story, and hopefully he doesn't roll his eyes too much when he listens to me edit this. But when we were having the discussion, he always tells this story about when he was a kid and his sister got pregnant in college and moved home. And she ended up on bed rest.
Oh, wow.
And he's, I forget, a bunch of years younger than her, 8 years younger than her, maybe.
Okay. Mhm.
Or 6 years younger, a significant portion of time. And she would, because she was on bed rest, she would call out to him and be like, "Can you bring me water? Can you bring me a book? Can you bring me this? And he would get so annoyed that she moved home and like ruined his experience of this like brief moment he was getting to be an only child, and like and then he had to help her with everything. And I was like, if you were a 2, you would have wanted to help her because that would have meant that she was like validating you and
She
loving
needed you.
needed you. That would have been beneficial to you in some way. You would not have hated that. And he's like, "Oh, okay." But here's the thing, you hated it, but you still did it to keep the peace. So clearly a 9.
The 5 rests her case.
Yes. But it was through that conversation, right? Where we had to have like a whole thing about like, what's the motivation? No, the motivation was to keep the peace in the house. It was not to help your sister.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's so funny. Similar story about somebody I know through, so she's listening to our podcast and she's like, "Hey, this person that I know, she thinks she's a 2." Somebody close in her life. And she's like, "No shot. Is she a 2?" I'm like, "Well, what makes you think that?" She's like, "I had her over for dinner," and she's describing this really chaotic scene, and she's like, "And she just walked outside and sat on my patio." She's like, "No way she's a 2." "Well, what do you mean? What would she have done if she was a 2?" She'd be like, "She'd be doing my dishes, she'd be offering to help me, she'd be falling all over herself trying to help me." It's like, "Well, maybe she's just really comfortable with you. Maybe that's it." She's like, "Nah, she's not a 2."
It could be a self-preservation too.
Could be a
It maybe wouldn't be quite as
yeah,
overt then.
right.
Maybe.
I don't really know the other person that well, so I can't really speak to it. She might be a 4. I don't.
Yeah.
But anywho, mistype, huge, because I think everybody has things in their number that they don't like, right?
Yeah.
What my voiceover to that is, something that you don't like, there's a reason you don't like it. It's probably part of you
Yeah.
somewhere deep down or at the surface is a part of you.
Yeah.
Those are usually the things that give us the ick.
It is. I have another 2-9 story, not to make it all about 2s and 9s, but I have a friend who is a 2. But originally she took a free test and it came back as 9.
Oh, interesting.
In her tri-type, she is an acts like a 9. But when she first took it back and she was like, "Oh my gosh," and I loved her. I loved this peacemaker 9 and like all of this sort of thing. And she's like, but when I really broke it down and took a better assessment with that's more accurate, that's not just about behaviors, It came back as a 2, and she's like, and when I read that one, I hated it. And therefore I knew it was right. Yeah.
That's it.
So it's that self-awareness of, I say that a lot to people when they get their Enneagram and they want to disagree with it, when they get their results back and they want to disagree with it. Sometimes the disagreement is because they just don't like that part of themselves at all. The other thing that can happen when they disagree with it, and this happened once before, where someone took the test and they took it very aspirationally. They took it as they wished they were these things. I wish I was helpful. I wish I was this. I wish I was that. And they took it with that lens. And then when they got the results back, they were like, yeah, that's not it at all. That's not me. Yeah.
That's like those assessments that you take in a magazine when you're like 14 and you're
Yeah.
like,
Right.
hold on, are you like a sporty cutie or are you a it's like
Yeah.
I want to be the trendy girl. I'm gonna answer my questions like that. Then you're gonna get the
Then you're
answer
going to
you
get
want,
that. Yeah. I often
but then you're
tell,
gonna be doing the wrong work.
right, you're going to be doing the wrong work, or it's just not going to make any sense to you.
Right.
Yeah. I often tell people that too. Like, you know, if you, when they mistype, have been occasions where someone will be like, no, I am like, it is wrong. The assessment is wrong. It mistyped me. To remind people, you answered the questions, right? So, and I say that like this on when I'm coaching someone, I maybe wouldn't say it quite that directly, but it's like you answered them, right? It took your answers and it goes through a
Yeah.
whole formula. These are your answers that give you these results.
Right.
Oh. So we can talk about what are the things that were happening while you were taking the assessment that caused you to answer the way that you did. And that's maybe you have a mistype where I have seen, I mean, we've talked about lines and we've talked about soul child. I've seen people mistype as their stress number if they took the assessment at a time that they were really, really stressed out, then they were answering through the lens of their stress number.
That makes sense. For what it's worth, if I did an assessment today, I'd probably come back as an 8.
Yeah. So, okay. We're not totally off topic. We're doing better. We're staying on topic. 2s and 9s,
Who do we have left?
6s and 2s we talked about.
I feel like 2 is a really common mistype.
I think the subtypes of 2, well, I mean, the social 2 looking like a 3, but then you have to think about it through the lens of you could mistype as anything in your tri-type, I think, pretty easily. Or your stress and growth line could also, just like we just talked about, impact that.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, we talked about 6s and the counterphobic 6, they sometimes look like 8s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that one too, but it's specific to the counterphobic 6.
And that's in the I can't be controlled, I won't be controlled.
Yeah. Right. And
Because reminder, counterphobic 6 kind of rejects authority. So when they're actively rejecting authority, it can read like, you're not going to control me, which is very 8. I mean, the example that I can give you guys is that when Landon will like tell a joke and I think it's funny, or like do something and I think it's funny, I'll be like, do that thing again. Be like, no, I'm not doing that. Just because I asked him to. It's like, no, you asked me to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to.
not going to.
Yeah. There's another story that I tell where I had left a list of things that, like, I just needed him to do. This was when he was working 6 days on, 3 days off, so and this was before kids. So he had the day off, so I, like, just said I think it was, like, dog food, something else, like, just a little list, right, on the counter. And I got home from work that day. He wasn't there. I walk over to the list, and on the bottom of the list, it's written, "And pay me $1,000,000. Do we write things on this sheet of paper that we know will never happen?"
That's great.
Like, come on! Like, simple.
Yeah.
I'm not talking move mountains here. We were 2 single Pringles at that point, not even married. Dog food, probably toilet paper and paper towel.
He did not want to go to Costco, okay?
You will not control me.
Yeah. It's probably worth talking about the mistype of 5s and 6s, because when I first took the Enneagram, that was a mistype that for me
Yeah.
personally. The first time I took the Enneagram, I took a free version and it came back as a 6. And I was like, I don't, that, yes. It was like one of those, like, yeah, some things, but no, like
What
maybe a
what stuck out
little.
to you?
I just remember reading through it and being like, it was very focused on the super high anxiety, the big thing was the prepared for everything. I can align with the desire for security as a motivation. I think 5s are solving for security, solving for anxiety in a different way than 6s. It's particularly in the idea that 6s are prepared for all the things. I am not. I am not. I don't have the same like energy or desire. I can catastrophize with the best of them if I get in that mode. I can definitely catastrophize and tell you all the ways the sky is falling. But I don't know how to describe it for me, but when I read it, I was like, this just does not feel right. Like this is like, yeah, I mean, because I think I could read any number and be like, oh, I resonate a little bit with that one, but it didn't feel
Sure.
right. And it actually caused me to reject the Enneagram a little bit for a time where I was like, nah. But then when I went back and did some research, found the IEQ not, because again, let's talk about like the thing, right? The 5 thing was, well, I'm going to go research and find one, figure out how to get better results or more accurate results. I shouldn't say better results, more accurate results. And through that found the IEQ 9 that has this, 98 to 99%, what I forget what the exact percentage is, but this very high percentage accuracy on their test. And I took that one. And when it came back as a 5, I was like, oh, yes, I feel so seen. And so it was when I look back on that, it was the difference of the feeling, which is a crazy thing for a 5 to say. But in reading that, where it was, this just is not this preparedness, this sort of thing, just does not resonate for me. So, but it is
Yep.
common, I think, for 5s and 6s. They're both in the thinking triad, they're wings of each other. And so it can be very easy to mistype that if you are not really in tune with the differences in those two motivations.
That makes sense. I could see that in you from the security side of it, but I think you've kind of mentioned too that your wings have slightly shifted even since you first took the assessment, right?
Yeah, yes. I would say I've definitely gotten more 4-like as I've gotten older.
Jealous.
Okay, so what are we still missing for mistypes? We've talked about 5s and 6s, 2s and 5s, 3s and 8s, 8s and 2s. We haven't talked
Ones and eights,
1s and 8s, 2s and 4s. No,
nines and
2s and
twos.
3s, 9s and 2s. Is that it? I feel
I
like
think
there's
that's it.
more. I feel like there's more.
7? 7.
7. I don't think of sevens as mistyping because I usually have like an affinity for the 7 energy, although we were recently wrong.
I know.
There was someone, Tannah and I were speculating, there's someone that Tannah and I thought was going to be a 7 who turned out to be a 5. So,
Okay, it's making more sense to me on that though, based off of subtype. Like, again, for those of anyone who hasn't listened to the subtype episode, highly recommend, because it does change how your number can feel.
I would say that's
Uh,
probably when I think about the mistype example I gave of 5 and 6 before, I would say
yeah,
that probably was also a part of it, was that the 1 to 1 5 in me was not resonating with this like basic generic 6 description at all.
that
So,
makes sense.
yeah.
That makes sense. Well, eh, I guess what's interesting about that too, where we thought this person was a 7, they ended up being a 5. Um, at least for me, the way that that made sense to me right away was, I don't know if you know this when I first met you, but when I first met you, I was like, I don't know if she likes me.
I hear that a lot. Us
Well,
it was
no.
from other
Oh
twos. It is common for twos to tell me that they thought that I didn't like that.
my God. I like there was a little bit where I was like, ugh, ooh, I don't know. But then we ended up connecting on something very quickly, but part of that is our upbringing and energies and everything
Yeah.
else. But I have the same feeling about that other person that that thought 7, maybe 5,
Mhm.
and I'm like, that was my very first thought when you told me, you were like, guess what? I was like, no way. She
Proud
doesn't like me.
But yeah, I'm sure she likes you fine. Yeah. I do think that's interesting though, because as we were going through all these textbooks, right, I had 2 notes that I took from when I took the Enneagram certification about extreme opposites. Did they talk to you about that in class?
Yeah, yeah, I
Mhm.
recall.
5s and 2s are extreme opposites on the Enneagram.
That makes sense.
The other extreme opposite is 7 and 4.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. So, nothing to do with mistyping, but just another little like fun fact from the
Fun fact about us.
from the resident Enneagram 5 who keeps notes on random facts like that.
Oh my goodness. Well, that makes sense. Look at us being extreme opposites on a
Yeah,
podcast together. That's why it works.
it does.
I think people have actually given us that feedback before.
It's one of the things that to me is like curious as to the number of 2s that so you feel like you collect 8s. I sometimes feel like I collect 2s. I know a lot of 2s.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And every time, well, Maggie who listens to the podcast and comments, and
Yeah,
we love her and she's wonderful. Maggie
we love
recently took
her.
the Enneagram and she came back as a 2. And I was like, oh, there's another one. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep. So,
Oh man, that's
yeah,
great.
it
That's
is.
great. Well, this was a fun episode. I think it was important for anybody in their early journey of figuring this out. So if you know your type or don't know your type or know someone who's getting interested in their type, share this with them. You can find us, as mentioned earlier, on all platforms where podcasts are found: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, us on socials, all
Yep.
of them,
All of
TikTok,
them.
Instagram. YouTube is also another place where You can watch Holly pour through textbooks and me sit very cozily with my blankies and my chairs. But if you have anything that you'd like to see, anything that resonates with you, comment, like, subscribe, DM us. If you're interested in being on the podcast, we want to hear from you, whether that be about Soul Child or something else. We would love to start developing a little roster of folks we can bring on.
I think if you're interested and you have expressed that to one of us in the past, we need to nail down a date. Let's get some dates on the calendar. Yeah, this was fun. Full exhibition of fiveness coming out in this one, complete with textbooks and notes from certification. It was good. Hopefully you got something out of it, learned a little something about possible mistypes. Tannah's already given all the places you can find us. If you're interested in taking an assessment, if you happen to make it to the end of this podcast and you're not sure what your type is, you want to take an assessment, we'd be happy to help you with that as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.